You are listening to the Retail Customer Experience Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the Retail Customer Experience Podcast. I'm Judy Model, editor of Retail Customer Experience. Today's topic is data and business intelligence, and why data, understanding data, responding to data, and how AI plays into all of that is crucial for the retailer. Retailers are striving to not only meet customer expectations, but exceed those expectations. So I'm excited to have Sean Byrnes, co-founder and CEO of Outlier, as our guest today. Sean's a pioneer when it comes to software innovation. Prior to founding Outlier in 2015, he co-founded Flurry in 2005, the largest analytics company for mobile applications. Flurry was acquired by Yahoo in 2014. So Outlier, which was named a 2018 Cool Vendor and Analytics Company by Gartner Research, presents a new way of thinking about BI. It helps global retail, financial services, and pharmaceutical organizations identify unexpected behavioral changes within critical business data. The automated business analysis platform uncovers unexpected patterns and relationships using advanced AI and machine learning algorithms. So, Sean, welcome, and thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me.
So let's kick off with you giving us some insight on why you founded Outlier and where data and BI sit within the retail environment today.
Sure. So I got started with Outlier because as I worked with businesses, retailers, and e-commerce companies, and all sorts of interesting businesses, the most common thing people would ask me about data was, listen, Sean, what should I look for? How do I know what to look for in all this data that I have? We all want to find the emerging problems, the emerging opportunities, so that we can be proactive, that we can, take advantage of shifts in consumer preference or take advantage of new trends in the market. But knowing where to start and what to look for is hard, especially as data begins to erupt from every part of the business. You have data coming from not just purchasing systems and point of sale systems. It comes from marketing tools, customer support systems, logistics and supply chain. Data is erupting out of everything, and it just keeps getting bigger every day, every week, every month, every year. So knowing what to look for in that data is the difference between being ahead of everything and being proactive, or only reacting when things get so big there's no possible way to miss them. And so Outlier, I started Outlier because the state of the art of tools today, they're very good at answering questions you know to ask. So if you want to know how many customers do I have in my Oakland, California location, your existing tools are very good at telling you that, but they're not very good at bringing you those questions. And so Outlier is a new form of business intelligence designed for this growing enterprise, the growing data system, where Outlier brings you questions. You connect it to your data, and it automatically brings you those questions proactively, so you know where those emerging opportunities and emerging problems might be, since Outlier is looking through all your data and bringing it to you, using artificial intelligence to act like a data analyst or a virtual data scientist on your behalf. And the best part, I think, in the retail sector today is because data has gotten so big, there's an enormous ability to use that data and turn that data from a liability into an asset. I think for many years now, a lot of retail companies have struggled because their data is so vast and so growing, but also distributed in so many different places that it becomes a bit of a burden that, my data for customer returns is over here, my data for purchases is over there, and my data for inventory is in yet another place. And it's hard to kind of pull them all together. And a lot of people have tried to convince retailers that the only way to get value from data is to pull them into some magical data lake or magical database where they're all in one place. The data has to be pristine and perfect, and only then can you start to really utilize it for strategic advantage. And that's just not the reality. So today you can take AI tools like Outlier that can work in an environment where your data is spread out. It can work in an environment where your data is not perfect, and provide you that insight you've always wanted without requiring you to go through months and weeks and years of digital transformation to get there.
All right, so that whole idea of having, I need to pull it all together, that sounds like one of probably many misconceptions that retailers have about data and BI. And, in talking to retailers, for stories and at shows, they all seem to grasp that this is, something they need to be doing. but they also seem to have other misconceptions about it. Have you heard any other kind of like, not falsehoods, but, a feeling of why they're not doing it and it's not an accurate reason for not doing it?
Oh, there's plenty of misconceptions. I think a lot of them are driven by vendors or participants who really want to push more tools, more products on an industry that really just needs to get value out of the tools they already have. So some misconceptions that are common is one, you need to have really high quality or perfect data to be able to make decisions. And the reality is no business on planet Earth has perfect data. Even some of the most data-driven organizations in the world deal in a world where maybe some of your data isn't trustworthy or some of your data is dirty or has poor data quality. The question is not how to make it perfect. The question is how best to adjust to a world where some of the data might not be perfect. And this newer class of tools that's coming out, of which Outlier is one, is designed for a world of dirty data where they will actually flag data quality issues for you, make sure that you navigate around those potholes. Because there's no perfectly paved road in the world. Every road is going to have some things to avoid. And as long as you're cognizant of that, you can make a lot of motion in the industry. Another misconception is that your data has to be comprehensive, that you have to have everything. You have to track everything. You have to track ad campaigns and website visits or foot traffic in your store and point of sale. And if you're not tracking everything, then for some reason you're at a strategic disadvantage. And I think the reality is that it's almost impossible to track everything. Even if you track everything, it'll be spread across many different places. And that's okay. I think the question is whether or not data's job is to run the business, or your job is to run the business and data's job is to make your job easier. And we firmly believe in the latter, that data is a way to augment your decision making, to make you better at doing your job. And you don't need to have comprehensive data to make you better at doing your job. You just need help in making sure data is bringing you decisions, making sure you're making the right decisions, is helping inform the decisions that you're making. And that can be true even if you don't have fully comprehensive data on everything. Even a little bit can get you quite a long way. And the last part that's a misconception that's quite common is that the only way to really get high value from data is to have lots of data scientists, to find expert statisticians. They're very expensive, they're very hard to find, but if you have lots of data scientists, they just solve the data problem for you. That's just not the reality of the way things work. For one, there's a skills gap. I saw a study that was saying there's only about, out of UC Riverside, which said there's only enough data scientists in the world to fill 50% of the currently open positions. So there just aren't enough data scientists out there for us to have as many as we think we would want. But secondly, even if you bring in a data scientists are people. There's only so many hours a day, so many days in a week. There's only so much that they can do. I think a lot of it requires thinking differently about data, thinking about how it can help you, and looking towards newer generations of tools that are designed to tackle these problems in new ways. So you don't have to hire an army of data scientists.
Well, that's good news for a lot of retailers. And you're right. At some of the big shows like NRF, oftentimes the people on stage they kind of boast, hey, I've got 230 data scientists, and maybe they're going to be really happy to hear that they're not going to need that kind of a labor force. So the best way for our readers at Retail Customer Experience to kind of get a good view of what a technology can do is to illustrate with a customer story. So I was hoping, you don't have to name the actual client or customer, but if you can share how Outlier is helping a retailer or has, delivered on the promise of what you guys are doing, that would be really interesting.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. And one of the pieces of good news about the new generation of AI tools is that since they generate insights, all these tools should be fountains of case studies. I think the old generation always said that if you didn't get value from the platform, it was your fault, you were using it incorrectly. Whereas this new generation that we're part of, we owe it to you to show that we have results. And so Outlier is a fountain of examples. What I'd like to share here is, so we worked with a large retailer, and Outlier was plugged in to look at all of their point of sale terminal data, all of the purchasing data. And one of the things that flagged for them, and this is a fairly common kind of insight you might expect, was that in late February, they saw a really unexpected jump in demand for kid sandals. So kid sandals typically wouldn't start selling well until the spring when weather starts to warm up. But here
Right.
you were in late February seeing an abnormally high and rising demand for specific kids sandals. And this is the kind of organization where, a lot of their buying, their inventory management was on a seasonal basis. They'd followed the same playbook for years. But in adopting these new tools and opening themselves up to insights, it's the kind of thing that they thought, interesting. We didn't know this was happening. What happens if we lean into it? And so they put aside their marketing, outbound marketing campaigns that they had lined up for March and decided, hey, let's just lean into kid sandals in March and see how deep this new developing vein of customer interest goes. And it turned out it went really deep. They ended up having 30% higher year-over-year sales in March for leaning into this kind of subtle indication of a new type of customer interest in a new kind of seasonal environment. And I think the interesting thing about that story is those kinds of insights exist in our data today. In fact, they've been there for years. We've just never been able to get them out. There's just been too much effort to kind of pull them out of the data. And you think about just a subtle indicator, consumers, while they're fickle, are telling us things every day through that behavior. So in this case, they were buying more kid sandals. In another world, they may prefer different kinds of payment methods or different kinds of processes and different sorts of things. But if we watch how that behavior changes, those are those emerging opportunities and problems I mentioned before, and they provide immediate revenue impact. These are not abstract. This is a company that found an insight one day and a few weeks later had leaned into it and was generating, again, 30% higher year-on-year revenue overall. So it's exciting to see that kind of impact. And we have, a weekly cadence of examples just like that coming out of the Outlier system, which is, and by the way, it's not because Outlier is magic. We don't have, elves and fairies running around on the data. The big difference is that most organizations are just not looking at all their data. I saw this one statistic where only 12% of business data ever gets examined, which is probably true. There's only, so many hours in the day. There's only so much people can look through, but a system like Outlier that's not limited by that can look through all your data, there is going to be something hiding there. I mean, it's like an iceberg. There's something below the surface, and so there's going to be some value there somewhere.
Well, that's an amazing thing because March after, you come off the holiday sales, you usually have that big dip in January, February, so to have that kind of impact is pretty nice. So for the retail business leader or the IT guy listening in, and I say IT because I just came across a study today that says the CIO is truly becoming a force now within the customer experience strategy. What do you recommend beyond calling Outlier, obviously, on how they can get started with data and business analysis? Maybe even start prepping before they call you guys in, or any first steps, that you hear yourself kind of saying over and over when you're talking to prospective clients.
Oh, I think the first thing that you can do, and this is probably the most important step you can take, is try to shake off bad habits. Try to get out of the world of these are the 5 metrics we've always tracked, and so these are the 5 metrics we always need. But because before you adopt Outlier or anything like this, the organization has to be ready to accept the unexpected. They have to be really receptive to the unknown because these things will challenge their assumptions. There may be beliefs in the organization about how the business runs, about what works, that just aren't true. And if you're not open to that kind of unexpected surprise or unexpected push, it doesn't matter how good the tools are, it doesn't matter how sophisticated the AI can be, the organization needs to be ready to accept the unexpected. And to get there, there's lots of ways to do it. One is to essentially just start to teach the team, teach the organization. There's a lot of great examples about how you can start just through education, try to expose them to new ideas and new ways of thinking. People who are in a student environment where they're learning are just proven to be more open to new ideas in general. So it doesn't even necessarily matter that you're teaching them about AI and data. You just start teaching them something, and that starts opening up people's minds. The second is to start to highlight how your organization has made progress or taken advantage of things that are new across the organization, because these things do happen every day. People have new ideas. They have new ways to move the business forward. And in highlighting them, you're rewarding the unknown, you're rewarding the new, you're getting people used to dealing with change. And it's that familiarity with change. We see universally companies that try to go through digital transformation, the number one factor in success is how receptive to change your organization is and how many change agents, so leaders, people in the organization who want to drive change there are. And so if you can lay that bedrock, then adoption of tools like Outlier or adoption of these new generation of data tools not only becomes a lot easier, but will be much more successful.
So, Sean, what do you see as the future of AI for retailers?
I think that, as I mentioned before with the skills gap in data science, I think AI has a potential to turn data from a liability into an asset. I think that the retail business of tomorrow needs to speak to the people making the decisions. We can't treat the business like this weird entity that we observe and poke at with spreadsheets and charts anymore. We need it to speak to us and tell us what it needs and where it needs to grow and what's going on. And so if you imagine a business a little bit like a garden, AI becomes a way to help shape that garden without us needing to show up every day and do the weeding and whatnot. And so I think that it's exciting across the whole organization. There are tools out there today that not just predict returns, but also will help us optimize product selection and product marketing to reduce returns in the future. There are tools out there right now which look at marketing effectiveness, not just in terms of marketing bringing people into stores, and not just people buying products, but do those people come back again? Do you build long-going relationships? And so AI is opening up this new world where the business actually speaks to us and brings us these interesting new decisions, interesting opportunities. And the exciting part for me is that means that in the future, retail will be much more dynamic, make faster decisions, and frankly, bring a better user experience in the end. So it's a really exciting first step of a long journey of seeing it evolve in retail.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, that's a great philosophy for anyone in business, right? I mean, when you close off your mind, you're closing down doors, and so that's been great. Is there anything, Sean, we haven't touched on in terms of the retail environment with Outlier?
Yeah, I will. The last thing I'll leave with is I think there's a lot of organizations who believe they have to do a lot of house cleaning before they can be ready for really value-added services, that they have to worry about cleaning up different systems. They have to worry about consolidating and doing all sorts of things before they're ready to really adopt value-added services like these new AI tools that Outlier represents. And the reality is that's not true. And in fact, if you wait a year, 2 years, 3 years to get everything to the point where you believe it's in order, two things will be true. One is that it probably won't be done because the world's changed in the process. We're never finished. We're never perfectly organized. Things are never finished. But secondly, everyone else is adopting these tools while you're spending that time. And so my recommendation is to start to adopt tools earlier, even if they aren't comprehensive everywhere on the systems that you have in place, and start to make change happen now and don't leave change for the future, because the reality is that the market gets more competitive every day. Nobody needs me to tell them that. And so if you can start to change how you operate and adopt these new types of tools sooner, the better you are prepared for that future as it comes, because the future comes to us, right? Life happens to us. We don't happen to life. And so the sooner we get ahead of it, the better off we are.
Well, thanks, Sean, for such great insight. It's been a pleasure talking with you. For those wanting to know more about Outlier, you can check out outlier.ai/retail. And if you want to ask Sean any follow-up questions, feel free to email him at sean@outlier.ai. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next Retail Customer Experience podcast.